There is a moment in every person's life when they are called to examine the condition of their heart. Not the physical heart that pumps blood, but the invisible one, the seat of emotion, awareness, and spirit. And while many signs in life may come and go, there is one sign that carries more danger than most people are willing to admit. It is the hardened heart. A heart that has become closed, indifferent, and unwilling to change. This condition is not always easy to detect because it wears the disguise of strength. It hides behind phrases like, "That's just how I am," or "I don't care anymore," or "People don't change, so why should I try?" But beneath these words lies a great danger. For a hardened heart is not a shield. It is not protection. It is decay in disguise. And once the heart hardens, it becomes the greatest barrier to growth, connection, and divine purpose. When God speaks of danger, he does not only speak of external storms, he speaks of internal weather. And there is no storm more violent than a soul at war with itself. A hardened heart is the battlefield where that war is silently waged. It is the refusal to feel, to forgive, to reflect. It is the quiet rejection of humility. At first, it may appear as strength, someone who is unbothered, composed, emotionally untouchable, but that is only the surface. Deep within, this person has sealed off the very chambers of the heart that allow them to be moved by beauty, by truth, and by pain. They have lost the ability to weep, not just with tears, but with the soul. And when a person can no longer feel the ache of life, they have cut themselves off from the very signal that leads them back to purpose. To have a hardened heart is to walk through life deaf to the whispers of the divine. You may hear noise, but not truth. You may see people, but not feel them. You may live in a house, but never know home. You may have friends, but never know intimacy. You may seek success, but never find peace. A hardened heart builds a life that looks whole on the outside, but is crumbling from within. It becomes a fortress, not a temple. A castle of isolation, not a sanctuary of truth. It walls out pain, yes, but it also walls out joy. And in doing so, it begins the slow process of spiritual suffocation. The person starts to move through life in patterns, routines, and rituals, but without any awareness. They are not living, they are surviving. The Shaolin teaching tells us that the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists. Because flexibility is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is awareness that everything in life moves. The river flows, the wind shifts, the seasons change, and so must we. But the hardened heart refuses this. It clings, it resists, it grips the past, it resents the present, it fears the future. It does not trust the flow of life, and so it becomes rigid. But rigidity is death in slow motion. Nothing rigid lasts. Even mountains are worn down by time and water. The hardened heart may seem stable, but it is dying, slowly, quietly, tragically. We must ask, how does the heart become hard? No one is born this way. Every child enters the world with a soft heart, open, curious, vulnerable. But life has its way of bruising the spirit. Betrayal, rejection, loss, abuse, disappointment. These experiences form emotional calluses, and if not healed, they become walls. The pain becomes identity, the wound becomes personality, and the person begins to confuse being guarded with being strong. But pain is not meant to harden us. It is meant to awaken us. It is the messenger, not the master. When we ignore the message and choose to build armor instead, we are choosing survival over growth. And while that may help us avoid hurt, it also keeps us from healing. Mary Jane, there is a particular kind of danger in a hardened heart that has become wise in worldly things, because now the person can navigate life successfully without ever being connected to their soul. They can build businesses, raise families, travel, influence others, and still never meet themselves. They can quote scripture, attend spiritual events, wear beads or robes or suits of professionalism, but never touch the inner self. The hardened heart is not only numb, it is deceived. It believes it is awake while it is fast asleep. It believes it is strong while it is empty. This is why God warns us not to shame us, but to call us back, to return us to softness, to remind us that it is the broken heart that becomes open, and it is the open heart that becomes wise. There is no path to mastery that does not pass through humility, and there is no humility without softness. But softness requires courage. It is easy to be angry, easy to shut down, easy to say, I'm done. But it is much harder to say, I will still try, I will still believe, I will still open myself, even though it hurts. That is the path of the warrior, not the warrior who fights the world, but the one who tames the self. The warrior of the inner path understands that the greatest enemy is not out there, it is in here. And that enemy, more than anything, wants you to shut your heart. Because once your heart is closed, everything else becomes automatic. You stop asking questions. You stop seeking truth. You stop growing. And that is exactly what darkness desires. A world full of people who feel nothing, believe nothing, fight for nothing, and awaken to nothing. A hardened heart is not only dangerous for the person who carries it, it is dangerous for the people around them. Because hurt people do not just stay hurt, they often pass it on. The person who cannot love becomes the person who cannot let others love them. The person who cannot forgive becomes the person who punishes others for their wounds. The hardened heart is a cycle of pain. It is the echo of trauma. But it can be broken, not through shame, not through pressure, but through awareness. When the person finally becomes still enough to say, I don't want to live this way anymore, that is when the crack appears. That is when the first drop of water touches the stone. And over time, that water, your awareness, your tears, your willingness will soften even the hardest heart. It just takes time and humility, courage. God does not despise the hardened heart. He longs to heal it, but he cannot heal what you will not reveal. You must be honest. You must be willing to say, I have become closed. I have become bitter. I have become numb. And then you must be willing to open. Just a little. Just enough for the light to come through. The Shaolin way is not about pretending to be enlightened. It is about being brutally honest with where you are. It is not about appearing calm. It is about becoming real. And reality begins in the heart. If the heart is lost, the mind cannot guide you. If the heart is shut, the spirit cannot move through you. If the heart is broken, let it be broken open, not broken closed. Because every scar tells a story. And when told with awareness, that story becomes your strength. The danger of a hardened heart is not that it makes you bad. It's that it makes you blind. Blind to opportunity. Blind to love. Blind to grace. You begin to see the world through pain-colored lenses. You interpret kindness as manipulation. You reject support as weakness. You avoid joy because it feels unsafe. You mistake numbness for peace. But there is no peace in shutting down. There is only silence. And silence is not the same as serenity. Serenity is when the heart is open, but untroubled. The hardened heart is closed and falsely protected. It is a fragile fortress. One word, one memory, one loss, and the whole structure crumbles. So how do we begin to change? Start small. Sit in silence. Place your hand on your heart and simply ask, what am I still carrying? Do not judge the answers. Listen. Listen deeply. Let the memories come. Let the tears come. Let the resistance come. And do not run from it. Meet yourself there. The heart does not harden in one day, and it will not soften in one day either. But it can, and it must. Because the path ahead, your purpose, your awakening, your fulfillment, cannot be reached with a closed heart. You will find yourself blocked, confused, frustrated. And the reason is not outside of you. It is within. Always within. This is the wisdom of the ancient path. Softness is strength, vulnerability is power, feeling is clarity, and the heart, when open, becomes the compass to guide your life. When hardened, it becomes a weight you carry into every room, every relationship, every moment. So let it go. Let the walls crack. Let the light in. Let God show you what life can feel like when your heart is alive again, not protected, but empowered. Not frozen, but flowing. Not numb, but awake. Because a heart that feels is a heart that lives. And that is why God said, having this sign, a hardened heart, is very, very dangerous. Because it is the one sign that tells you you are no longer living from the soul. But the beauty is you can return. And the return begins with a choice. A sacred choice. To soften. There is a moment in the journey of every soul when the most dangerous turn is not the one that leads to failure, but the one that leads to justification. Many people fear mistakes, but the wise fear something deeper. The moment they stop calling a mistake a mistake. When a person begins to justify what they know in their soul is wrong, they are not just defending their behavior, they are slowly disconnecting from their highest self. And God warns us about this, not because He is angry, but because this is the precise moment the spirit begins to turn away from light. To justify wrongdoing is to enter a slow spiral, one that doesn't start with evil, but with excuses. It begins with small rationalizations. It's not that bad. Everyone does it. They deserved it. This is who I am. These phrases may seem harmless at first, but they are seeds, and over time they grow into a tree with deep roots. Roots that grip the soul and do not let go. There is a sacred difference between making a mistake and defending it. Mistakes are part of being human. They are inevitable. But when the mistake becomes the standard, when wrong becomes comfortable, when the soul no longer flinches at the impact of its choices, that is when the danger begins. God is not offended by your imperfection. He is patient with your growth. What He warns you about is the moment your spirit no longer seeks to grow, that moment when you say, "This is just how I am," instead of saying, "This is what I need to overcome." Justification is dangerous because it creates a false peace. You may feel calmer, less guilty, less conflicted, but that calm is not healing, it is deception. It is the stillness of a soul that has silenced its conscience. One of the most subtle enemies of transformation is comfort, not the comfort of rest, but the comfort of ego. When you become more interested in protecting your identity than transforming it, you will start to defend even the behaviors that harm you. You will build arguments around your dysfunction. You will gather friends who validate your flaws. You will search for philosophies and teachings that let you remain the same. And in doing so, you will sink deeper and deeper into a version of yourself that cannot be touched by truth. This is how people become lost while believing they are on the right path. This is how they walk into the dark, convinced they are walking in the light. And the longer they stay there, the harder it becomes to return. Because once you have built your life on excuses, the truth feels like an attack. The teachings of Shaolin remind us, the path is not comfortable, but it is clear. There is no growth without discomfort. There is no evolution without confrontation. There is no discipline without inner honesty. And yet, how often do we trade growth for safety? How often do we silence the small voice inside us that says, "This is not right," simply because it would require us to change? It is not the world that binds most people. It is their unwillingness to let go of their own patterns. The moment you stop questioning your own actions, you begin to die inwardly. You may still move, speak, function, but your soul is shrinking. And the shrinking soul is a silent tragedy. Why do people justify wrongdoing? Because accountability is painful. To truly acknowledge that you hurt someone, betrayed someone, lied, manipulated, ignored, or abandoned someone, it takes courage, it takes humility, and it takes a willingness to feel. But many people avoid that pain. Instead, they reshape the story. They cast themselves as the victim, they shift blame, they say, I had no choice, or they pushed me to do it, or it's not my fault. These are protective narratives, born not from evil, but from fear. The fear of being seen, the fear of facing the consequences, the fear of being wrong. But here is the paradox. The moment you stop hiding from your wrongs, they lose power over you. The moment you face the truth, the lie loses its grip. And that is when healing begins. The danger of justifying your mistakes is that it rewrites your moral compass. Slowly, you stop feeling guilty, then you stop feeling anything. And when nothing disturbs you, nothing moves you. And when nothing moves you, you become unreachable. This is what spiritual masters fear more than failure. A student whose soul has gone numb, not because they are bad, but because they are unreachable. There is no wisdom that can be poured into a cup that is already full of excuses. The Taisowafix, Yukara, thank you. There is no light that can penetrate a wall of justification. And so the student must first empty themselves. They must be willing to say, I was wrong. These are not words of weakness. They are words of awakening. To acknowledge wrongdoing is not to shame yourself. It is to honor yourself. Because you are not your worst behavior. You are the one who notices it. You are the awareness behind the action. And as long as you are willing to see it clearly, you are still on the path. But when you begin to say, this is who I am, you stop walking. You plant your roots in the wrong soil. You accept a smaller version of yourself. And that is the most dangerous sign, not the mistake, but the resignation. The moment you give up your responsibility is the moment you give away your power. God's warning is not a threat. It is an invitation. He is saying, do not become your shadow. Do not protect the very chains I came to break. When you justify the lie, you reject the truth. When you defend your wounds, you delay your healing. And when you make excuses for your lower self, you silence your higher self. This is why the inner path is difficult, because it demands honesty over comfort. It asks you to look in the mirror and not turn away. It calls you to feel the weight of your own decisions, not to drown in guilt, but to rise in clarity. One of the greatest disciplines you can develop is the discipline of interruption. To stop yourself mid-sentence and ask, is this true? Or am I just defending myself again? That moment of pause can shift the entire trajectory of your life. Because awareness is always the beginning of change. The longer you live in unawareness, the more difficult it becomes to shift. Not because change is impossible, but because you've built an identity around your excuses. An identity is the hardest prison to escape. There's a reason ancient teachers taught in paradoxes, because the truth is often hidden behind opposites. The one who weeps for their mistakes is the one closest to wisdom. The one who trembles at their own pride is the one most grounded in humility. The one who breaks inside when they hurt another is the one with the most sacred strength. And the one who justifies everything is the one in greatest danger. Because if you can always explain away your actions, you have made yourself untouchable, not by others, but by the divine. In the Shaolin temple, we are taught to examine our inner world with ruthless honesty, not to be hard on ourselves, but to be real. There is no use pretending on the path. The more masks you wear, the more exhausting the journey becomes. But when you take off the mask, when you drop the defense, you begin to walk in freedom. Because there is nothing more liberating than knowing, I do not have to keep pretending. I do not have to keep defending my past. I can acknowledge it. I can learn from it. I can rise beyond it. This is the power of humility. And this is what God wants for you. Not perfection, but progression. There will always be a voice inside you that seeks to protect your image. It will whisper lies that feel like comfort. They wouldn't understand. I had no other option. I did what I had to do. But you must know, that voice is not your friend. It is the echo of your unhealed parts. It does not care about your growth. It only cares about your safety. But safety is not the same as purpose. And the voice of purpose will say something very different. This is your chance to change. This is your opportunity to rise. This is your moment to choose again. It does not shame you, it empowers you. But to hear it, you must quiet the noise of justification. We must stop calling comfort peace. There is no peace in hiding. There is only delay. And the longer you delay, the deeper you bury your light. The soul cannot thrive in denial. It thrives in truth. And the truth is this: you are not beyond redemption. You are not the sum of your worst choices. But you must stop defending them. You must allow yourself to feel the weight of what you've done, not to collapse, but to rise with new awareness, to grow, to repair, to transform. This is the way of the warrior, not one who wins battles in the world, but one who wins the war within. When God says this sign is dangerous, He is not condemning you, He is protecting you. He is saying, don't go further down this path. Don't silence your spirit. Don't lose your sensitivity. Don't sacrifice your integrity for the illusion of being right. The path back is always open, but you must walk it without the armor of pride. You must lay down your reasons. You must pick up responsibility, and you must walk toward the light, not because you are already there, but because your soul remembers what it feels like. You are not meant to live a life of defense. You are meant to live a life of awareness, growth, and truth. And that begins with the courage to say, yes, I have failed. Yes, I have fallen short. But I will no longer make excuses. I will transform this pain into power. I will rise again, not in pride, but in purpose. This is how the soul returns. This is how the light enters. This is how you become dangerous, not to yourself, but to everything that ever tried to keep you small. There is a danger so quiet, so invisible, that it lives unnoticed inside the hearts of many. It wears no mask of anger, no armor of pride. It does not shout, it does not storm. It simply sits, silent, still, and deadly. This is the danger of envy. Not loud envy, but silent envy. The kind that creeps in unnoticed, the kind that smiles when others win, but dies a little inside each time they do. It is a sickness of the soul, so subtle that most never realize they carry it, but God sees it. And God warns us. This sign is very, very dangerous, because it is the silent destroyer of peace. It is the quiet thief of joy, and it is the unseen barrier that keeps you from your destiny. Envy is the disease of comparison. It is the spirit's confusion between what is for you and what belongs to another. It is not a hatred of others. It is a discontentment with self. You see someone rise, and instead of being inspired, you feel diminished. You witness someone's blessings, and instead of gratitude for your own, you feel robbed. But they have not taken anything from you. Their win is not your loss. Their elevation is not your fall. Yet the heart tightens, the mind calculates, and the soul contracts. Envy poisons, not just your perception of others. It corrupts the way you see yourself. And this is where the true danger lies. It distorts reality. It whispers that you are not enough, that life is unfair, that there is never enough to go around, that the world is a competition and you are losing. The most terrifying thing about envy is not that it makes you bitter, but that it can make you hollow. You start to lose your ability to celebrate, to genuinely rejoice in another's joy. You become cold in the face of good news. You pretend to be supportive, but inside, your silence is screaming. This is not because you are evil. It is because your soul is starving. Envy is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is spiritual starvation. You are not nourished by your own sense of purpose, so you begin to feed off the lives of others. You scroll, you watch, you compare, and you consume, but none of it satisfies, because none of it was meant for you. You are trying to fill your soul with someone else's destiny, and it will never fit. When you walk the ancient path, you learn this lesson early. Comparison is spiritual suicide. You kill your own power every time you wish to be someone else. You trade authenticity for imitation. You abandon the inner path for the external chase. But what is external is never enough. It never ends. There is always someone better, richer, more beautiful, more successful. And if you live by that measure, you will never be free. This is why silent envy is so dangerous, because it can live inside a person who appears peaceful, a person who meditates, who speaks wisdom, who wears robes of calmness, but inside they are changed. Every compliment given to another is forced. Every celebration is hollow, because deep down they believe they have been left behind by life. But no one is left behind. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not invisible. You are only disconnected. The moment you begin to envy another is the moment you forget your own essence. You are no longer centered. You are no longer still. You are looking outward, chasing shadows, measuring your spirit with the wrong scale. And the more you look outward, the more you lose sight of the treasure within. Envy disconnects you from your own blessings. It makes you blind to what is already growing in your life. You forget how far you've come, what storms you've survived, what mountains you've climbed, because your eyes are on someone else's summit. The Shaolin path teaches that a warrior walks forward with eyes fixed on his own steps, not on the footsteps of others. If your eyes are always looking to the side, you will stumble, you will fall, not because of them, but because you were distracted. When you allow envy to live in you, you are constantly pulled in every direction. Your energy is no longer focused. You are no longer aligned. You are trying to become someone else instead of becoming yourself. And what a tragedy that is. To live your whole life trying to become what someone else already is, while never realizing the power of who you were born to be. But envy is patient. It waits in the background. It doesn't show itself until someone else shines. It doesn't scream until someone else succeeds. That is how it hides. That is how it deceives. And that is why you must be watchful. You must be honest. Ask yourself, when someone I know succeeds, do I feel joy? Or do I feel something else? That something else, that quiet discomfort, that internal shrinking, that is your signal. That is your wake-up call. That is the moment when you must pause, breathe, and return to yourself. Not to shame yourself, not to condemn yourself, but to recalibrate. To remind yourself that their light is not your darkness, that their success is not your failure, that the universe has enough light for everyone. When you catch envy early, you can dissolve it with awareness. You can say, I see you, I feel you, but I will not obey you. But if you ignore it, if you let it grow, it will evolve. Silent envy eventually turns into resentment. Resentment into sabotage. Sabotage into bitterness. Bitterness into isolation. And now you are not only hurting yourself, you are hurting the very relationships that could support you. You begin to pull away. You begin to criticize behind closed doors. You begin to see everyone's success as a threat. But you are only at war with yourself. The world is not your enemy. You are. Envy can even disguise itself as ambition. You tell yourself you're just driven, just competitive, just hungry. But deep down, you are being fueled by insecurity. You are not running toward your vision. You are running from your sense of inadequacy. And that is why you never feel fulfilled. No matter what you achieve, it doesn't feel like enough. Because you were not acting from alignment. You were acting from comparison. You were not pursuing your purpose. You were trying to outshine someone else. And when that is your goal, you will always feel behind. Because you are not living from the soul. You are performing for a scoreboard that does not exist. This is why God speaks softly but clearly. Be careful when your joy depends on someone else's failure. Be careful when your peace depends on being better than others. Be careful when your goals are rooted in proving someone wrong. That is not purpose, that is pain. And pain cannot carry you into joy. It can motivate for a moment, but it cannot sustain a life. You need something purer, something deeper, something internal. You need to return to yourself, to your breath, to your center, to your truth. And your truth is this: no one can take what is meant for you. No one can steal your blessing. No one can delay your destiny. except you. And envy is one of the fastest ways to delay what is already yours, because when you are focused on someone else's lane, you stop watering your own garden. You stop tending to your own soil, and your soul begins to dry. But it is not too late. You can return. You can bring your attention back. You can nourish your life again with gratitude. Because gratitude is the medicine for envy, the antidote, the remedy. Every time you feel envy arise, respond with gratitude. Not forced gratitude, not performative, but sincere. Ask yourself, what is already growing in my life that I have ignored? And you will be amazed how quickly envy dissolves. But you must practice. You must train the mind. Like a warrior sharpens his blade, you must sharpen your awareness. Do not wait until envy becomes a wildfire. Catch it when it is still a spark. Meet it with presence. Meet it with kindness. Do not judge yourself for feeling it, but do not feed it either. Starve it of attention. Starve it of belief. Because it only survives when you give it energy. And the moment you see it clearly, it loses its power. The true path is not about being the best, it is about being your best. And your best is not found through comparison, it is found through connection. Connection to your source, your breath, your values, your path. And when you are connected, there is no room for envy. Because you know who you are, and you know that what's for you will never miss you. You move with trust, you walk with peace, you live with joy, not because everything is perfect, but because you are aligned. And when someone else wins, you clap with both hands, not because you are trying to look good, but because your soul is clean. Because you are not in competition, you are in union. Because we do not rise alone, we rise together. And when one of us awakens, all of us are invited to go higher. So when God says, this sign is dangerous, listen. He is not warning you to fear others. He is warning you to be watchful of your own spirit. Do not let silent envy grow inside you. It will steal your joy, your energy, your vision. Catch it, observe it, then let it go. Return to yourself. Return to gratitude. Return to your lane, because there is beauty growing there, waiting for you to notice. And when you water that beauty, you won't have time to compare. You'll be too busy blooming.